It's my pleasure to welcome Luke, Manny, and Trevor to speak on the popular struggles of South Africa. Manny's going to get this going, and when we're finished with the presentations, I will come around to anyone who wants to ask questions, make comments, so that you speak in the mic. We are live streaming tonight so that other people can watch tonight's presentation, and you'll have it for your archives to show your grandkids. Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, for having us. I'm also very privileged to have these two guests, Trevor Ngwane and Luke Sinwell, here from South Africa. I would also like to thank the Professional Staff Congress of the City University of New York for, in fact, facilitating this by bringing Trevor and Luke to New York City and helping them come here through for a conference that we had last weekend on the question of the neoliberal university, which was a very big success. And so I'd like to thank the organizers at BSC and the BSC leadership for having that. Now, I think to the main task today, we're here to discuss the social movements in South Africa particularly, and much of this revolves around a book that was conceived by the three of us, actually in Melville, which is a small suburb in Johannesburg, over coffee at a place called Poppy's, which many of you probably know, yeah, it's very well known. And so, an afternoon of discussion about the social movements, especially the movements around the slums, turned into a project that I believe is an ongoing project that seeks to understand the new social movements and the political organization of working people in urban areas. And, in that way, I'd like to say that much of our discussion revolved around the fact that we have social movements that are emerging as a consequence of mass urbanization. Many of you know Mike Davis's work, which focuses on the expansion of poverty on a global scale. And this book called City of Slums was also an inspiration in a very profound sense, because he identified about 10 years ago the fact that the majority, really, of the urban working class live in slums that are in the major cities of the world, especially in cities of the global south. So, for instance, cities have rapidly expanded throughout the world, and when we hear about population growth in a city like, let's say, Delhi, from 10 million to 20 million over a 15-year period, obviously, there are some dynamics that take place that are rooted in the political economy of India, and one of the major dynamic there is the urbanization as a consequence of the displacement of peasants from the rural areas. And where do these new workers end up? They end up living, for the most part, in slums within and surrounding cities. Of course, every city is different in the nature of slum communities, but one thing that is all pervasive is the lack of services. For instance, the lack of electricity, the lack of clean water, the lack of sanitation, and certainly, lack of education, housing, and so forth and so on. And in fact, this is the norm. This is the major pattern that we see around the world, and many urban workers around the world live in conditions that are highly, I would say very clearly, they're highly impoverished, and life is incredibly threatened through these in this situation. So much so that we have a process in which the working class in urban areas have begun to protest in many ways. The two speakers are leading activists in South Africa, and they have studied and participated in struggles in and around Johannesburg and South Africa's major cities. in the northern region of South Africa, including Johannesburg. And that work has, and work around organizing has led to identifying major movements around electricity, around transportation, around housing, and so forth and so on, many other movements that they had participated. Another major point is the fact that those people who are living in the urban areas are urban workers and working class people who are expanding dramatically, as I was pointing earlier, and they really make up the majority of working class people around the world. So I'll stop there for a moment, although I'd like to speak just briefly about the book. This book, Urban Revolt, State Power and the Rise of People's Movements in the Global South, covers 3 major regions around the world, 3 major continents. So of course, there's much more work to do in understanding slums and urban communities. They include Africa, not limited to South Africa, but also Nigeria, Lagos. It includes South Asia, Kolkata, Jakarta, and several other cities. And it also includes Latin America, Mexico City, Montevideo, and I think it's Sao Paulo, forgive me. And in any case, I urge you to get a copy of the book if you're interested in the topic. But let me introduce our guests that we have. I come here often, so I don't need to introduce myself. I think we're very lucky, once again, because of the PSC, to have these 2 guests. I'll start with Luke Sinwell, who's going first, I believe. Luke is a senior researcher at the South African Research Chair in Social Change at the University of Johannesburg. He's published widely on social movements and popular protest. His latest book, with Siphiwe Botha, is The Spirit of Marikana, The Rise of Insurgent Trade Unionism in South Africa. And so our second speaker, Trevor Ngwane, is also a doctor of social sciences, as is Trevor, and he's a social activist who is active in the socialist group and the United Front in South Africa, organizations that seek a pro-working class, pro-poor future, a pro-working class, pro-poor future for South Africa and the world. Okay, and he's, obviously he's going to publish his research in addition, but this is a very important book that we're going to discuss, focusing on the struggles in South Africa that have become so prominent over the last 5 years or so. So we'll start with Luke Sinwell and go from there.
Thanks, Manny, for that introduction. I just wanted to say a couple things about some of the linkages, actually, between the 2 books. Siphiwe Botha is the co-author of The Spirit of Marikana, and he is actually one of the characters in the first chapter of the Urban Revolt book, because he was at the center of a community-based organization called the Tembelihle Crisis Committee, which is an informal settlement of about 20,000 people southwest of Johannesburg. And he first went to Marikana as a community-based socialist militant in order to give solidarity to the mine workers one day after the Marikana massacre. So you can imagine the conflict. It was basically sort of a post-conflict environment for a year or so after the massacre, but you can imagine just one day after the massacre, because 34 mine workers, I think most of you will know that 34 mine workers were killed on 16 August 2012, and that it wasn't an accident. It was a premeditated attempt to destroy the independent working class power that was fermenting at Lonmin Platinum Mine. So there were thousands of rounds of live ammunition that were sent into Marikana that day, as well as mortuary vehicles in preparation for the killing of the striking mine workers. And that evening, after the 34 mine workers were killed, workers held a meeting in the shacks below the mountain and decided that they would continue to fight for a living wage. And there was obviously, a lot of distrust and tense. People, that evening and the following day, people were trying to find out what had happened to people. Because also there were a lot of people who had been arrested, so they wanted to know, is this person in jail or have they been killed? So Sepiwe entered in that context as an activist, and then later spent all of 2013 virtually undertaking oral histories and building trust with the worker committee leaders, because the strikes were organized by workers independently from unions. So there was the National Union of Mine Workers, which came to be known as the National Union of Management because of the close relationship over time that it built with management instead of rank and file. But still there were a lot of union organizers there. In fact, the two people who first conceptualized the demand for 12,500 were from two different unions. So they decided to put aside their union affiliation and actually collectively demand what was called a living wage of 12,500, which is about equivalent to $1,000 per month. And I also remember being in Marikana after the mine workers, they were on a mountain from the 9th of August. And in fact, on the 9th of August, 3,000 rock drill operators held a mass meeting and were deliberating on what to do in order to obtain this living wage of 12,500. And they decided that the following day they would march to management, because they were coming from different unions. So they decided that they would go directly to management. When they got to management told them, you must go through existing bargaining channels. You must go to the National Union of Mine Workers. When they went to the National Union of Mine Workers offices, they were attacked by the union that had become too close to management. And many believe that people were killed, and that's when they were attacked. That was actually the turning point in this struggle, because the workers were then under attack, and they decided they had to arm themselves with traditional weapons, and 3,000 or more waited on a mountain for their employer from the 11th of August to the 16th until they were gunned down. And then a team of us actually went there from the 18th of August when the mine workers were still on strike. They dropped their weapons and they were carrying around whips and other things. And I remember actually Trevor Ngwane was another activist, and I remember talking to him on the phone. And Trevor was telling me, okay, but the important thing, Comrade Luke, is not just to do the research, but also we need to figure out ways to extend the reach of the strike. So he was busy there trying to do what he could to mobilize. He also met with the workers' committee below the mountain, and his chapter is about the power of the workers, the organic capacity of the working class. And part of it is about the sense of power that he could feel below the mountain, the workers' power that was created through these committees. That's the second chapter in the book that he has. And then I could just say a few things about the spirit of Marikana, the rise of insurgent trade unionism in South Africa, and that the main objective was to challenge. When I was doing the research, over time, it obviously became increasingly clear that this was a massacre rather than a tragedy. But instead of just looking at mine workers as objects of police brutality, I wanted to look at what they did to change history. And I think now, as we approach the 5-year commemoration of the Marikana massacre, which is on 16 August 2017, it's time to read, write, and study the heroic figures of Marikana into our collective memories. So I hope if you do get the book, that you can view it in that way and find out what people did to change history, because I don't view it as a sad moment for the working class, but as one that is inspiring for all of us. Thank you.
Reverend Wani.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will start off where Luke left off, because in South Africa we got our political independence in 1994, and millions of people in South Africa and throughout the world had great hope that after the fall of apartheid would have a better life for the working class, for the poor. You know, it shouldn't just be freedom by word, but it should be freedom also in terms of economics, equality. So when Marikana happened, when 34 mine workers were shot dead by a government of liberation, everyone was shocked, everyone was disillusioned, and in fact, many people say Marikana was a turning point in the history of South Africa. Because any illusion that we've been victorious against apartheid started, to crumble. What is the victory worth if, when striking workers demand an end to the cheap labor system, to the migrant labor system, which comes from the days of colonialism, the days of apartheid? When workers say enough is enough with that, they get shot down by their own government. The people was an eye-opener, not just for activists like ourselves, not just for political analysts, academics, but for millions of people in South Africa and outside the world. As you know, the struggle against apartheid, the anti-apartheid movement, was one of the greatest international solidarity movements in history. I'm sure among you here, many of you can stand up and say, I did this, I did that, in support of that struggle. So, for South Africa, what followed Marikana was what I can call a political realignment. But more than that, what was born is what Luke's book and Spear's book is called The Spirit of Marikana, the spirit of resistance, the spirit of defiance, the spirit of going forward against all odds. I want to talk a bit about the implications of Marikana in the shack settlements, the shanty towns of South Africa, in the urban sphere, in the townships, such as in Thembelihle. So, after Marikana, I can count 5 or more land occupations, land invasions, where people take over land, set up new settlements, usually setting up corrugated iron structures because of the problem of housing, and all those settlements were called Marikana. Indeed, in chapter 1 of the book, Luke quotes, in fact it's a must-have quote, what do you call that? Yeah. Quotes a comrade called Hendrik, who says about their strike in Thembelihle. I tell our people that the workers of Marikana did not get anything until they stood up and fought, sacrificed for what was rightfully theirs. We in Thembelihle must continue to bring the spirit of Marikana to our own doorstep and into the streets. If we sit quietly and patiently, the capitalists will win and will remain defeated. So what the workers did in Marikana inspired and agitated the struggle. It gave people hope that it was possible to create another history. Marikana had consequences for young people, for the students. In 2015, students at our universities, one of them is here, Comrade Shibu, over there. Maybe during the discussion she can tell us more. Students rose up demanding a new kind of education, what they call decolonized education. Education which is free of the baggage of colonialism, of apartheid, of cultural imperialism, where the languages, the cultures, the traditions of the indigenous people do not appear anywhere in the curriculum except in the anthropology section. These students at different times invoked the spirit of Marikana, sometimes explicitly saying we are fighting like the workers fought in Marikana. That spirit of defiance, of determination, what I call the spirit of forward ever, backward never. The spirit of Marikana spread into the labor movement, so that NUMSA, the National Union of Metal Workers, the biggest union in South Africa, broke out of the ANC, which is the ruling party, the party of Mandela, African National Congress, Communist Party, and COSATU Alliance, COSATU being the Congress of South African Trade Unions. The ANC, SACP, COSATU Alliance, we can call it in Gramscian terms, Antonio Gramsci, as the historic bloc. The bloc which is used to contain and muzzle the rebellion of the workers against their continued exploitation. NUMSA broke out of the alliance and resolved to form a workers' party to fight for a socialist South Africa. On the political front, a new party was formed by Julius Malema, who was the former president of the ANC Youth League. It keeps on going off and on. What can I do?
You're doing, it's coming across very well.
Very well, okay. Thank you, Michael. Julius Malema, who was president of the ANC Youth League, formed his party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, saying that political freedom had not brought economic emancipation. The wealth of the country was still in the hands of what is called white monopoly capital. This party, the EFF, youthful, led by youth, with the spirit, the vibrance of youth, was actually launched on the mountain where the workers were killed. So clearly, one can see the connections between what happened on that mountain on that fateful day on 16 August 2012. On the urban front, Tembeleke Crisis Community and many other communities got strength, got inspired to take forward their struggle. Because despite our victory over apartheid, the urban situation, the city continues to be dominated and owned by capital. Gentrification, of our cities, the kicking out, eviction of the poor, of the working class out of the city, the increase in food prices, in rents. I think it's happening everywhere. I'm sure it's happening here in New York, where the bourgeoisie is strangling the working class and strangling the middle class. So, in conclusion, I think the lesson, because if you read the book, as many said, it talks about struggles in Brazil, struggles in Mexico, especially in the urban situation. I think the struggle just takes different forms, specific forms, but the enemy and the dynamic is the same. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. I think in the spirit of Marikana, we can see all over the world, poor people, working class people, sometimes the lower middle class, intellectuals, standing up and demanding change for the better, demanding a different history in the belief that, you know, we can create a world where there's a place for everyone under the sun. My last point is that in South Africa, I'm a member of what is called the United Front, which was formed by the Metal Workers Union, and its mandate is to unite labor, community, and youth struggles. And I think that this must happen locally, but it must also happen internationally. So, thank you very much. I hope that the spirit of Marikana spreads not only in South Africa, but it reaches the shores of America and maybe helps you to get rid of Trump. Thank you.
Amandla! Amandla!